shame.
Interesting facts about famous people.
Perfect endings in westerns. One of the most beloved and important genres in all of film history, the western, started as the quintessential American of all types of films with nostalgia and portrayal of a bygone era of the Wild West, soon grew into one that is loved the world over. These westerns grab you from the beginning, but it's the perfect endings that deliver the killer blow. Here are some of the most memorable and iconic endings in the western genre. If you enjoy this video, hit the notification button to get my new videos. If you want to check out my many other videos, head over to my channel. The link is in the description. Let's get into it. Jeremiah Johnson, 1972. This western, about a trapper in the Rocky Mountains who tries to live a life of isolation, is disrupted after he runs up against a Native American chief, starring Robert Redford as the trapper. Directed with a dedication to grueling realism by Sidney Pollack. Although the film has many standout sequences, such as Redford's tussle with a grizzly and a tense crawl through a sacred burial ground, its best moment is the ending. The movie perfectly wraps up Johnson's troubled quest to find inner peace when he meets up with his mountain man mentor, Lap. Lap commends Johnson for his survival, then asks him, were it worth the trouble? Johnson then has another run-in with the native chief who has been his greatest adversary since moving to the mountains. Prepared for a fight, surprisingly, the chief calmly and wordlessly makes a gesture of peace towards him and rides off.
And some folks say
Unforgiven, 1992. Clint Eastwood's swan song to the western, and one of his best. An aging gunfighter comes out of retirement to hunt down a pair of cowboys responsible for mutilating a young prostitute in Big Whiskey, Wyoming. Like Redford's character, the film follows Eastwood's Will Money's attempt to live a peaceful life being disrupted by the pervasive violence of the West, and ties it up nicely with an exciting, vengeful-fueled saloon shootout. The final gunfight is well staged and sees Money bringing out his former angry self for one last act of savagery before putting it to rest. Following the battle, one of the script's final lines perfectly sums up Eastwood's intent to deconstruct the Western genre's tendency to romanticize violence. I've always been lucky when it comes to killing folks. Money says, when asked by a lackey how he made it out of the fight alive, just before delivering the finishing blow to his arch-enemy, Sheriff Bill Little. Eastwood agrees that they will in fact meet each other in hell. The Wild Bunch, 1969. Sam Peckinpah's bloody masterpiece about aging outlaws taking on one last heist before retirement. As it turns out, the gang is set up by a vengeful old colleague, and a sequence of violent gunfights ensue. The film's main theme of old-timers trying to find their place in a changing modern western frontier. The ending sees the gang's leader being abruptly shot down by a child. The colleague turned rival of the gang who set up the doomed heist comes to terms with the fact that even he is tired and out of his element, and decides against cashing in on the bounty he and the posse earned. McCabe and Mrs. Miller, 1971. A tragic revisionist western about a gambler and a prostitute starting a business in an isolated mountain town that soon became the target of a greedy and deadly corporation. As a western, McCabe and Mrs. Miller is different from others of its kind, failing to provide a story of heroism one might expect. However, it is a masterpiece, ending with a tragic moment in which our disillusioned hero dies, while the only other person he cares about drugs herself into oblivion in an opium den, completely unaware of his fate. It's a sad ending, but the only way this kind of story could end.
So quiet now, standing there in the doorway.
My Name is Nobody, 1973. An up-and-coming gunslinger by the name of Nobody meets his hero, the legendary sharpshooter Jack Beauregard. The two become friends. Soon Nobody develops a plan that will allow the aging Beauregard to retire from his illustrious shooting career on a high note. Beauregard, who wants to leave the limelight as soon as possible, has his reservations. Culminating in a duel between student and teacher, Beauregard seemingly meets his match in Nobody, and witnesses to the duel believe that the master gunslinger went out the only way he would have wanted to. As it turns out, Beauregard is not dead, and the duel was a setup intended to make Nobody a somebody and to allow Beauregard to fade away. Baffling and poignant, one of the most memorable endings in spaghetti western history.
Sam Peckinpah. That's a beautiful name in Navajo.
The Great Silence, 1968, one of the Good, the Bad and the Ugly, 1966, one of the greatest films ever made, and as such features one of the most iconic endings in cinema's history. After the three outlaws make it to the Sad Hill Cemetery where the gold awaits, the Western standoff commences. Ennio Morricone's beautiful music blasts as the three men stare each other down in a masterfully directed and edited sequence of suffocating sustained tension. Suddenly, everyone draws their pistols. The bad is shot dead, while the ugly discovers that his gun is unloaded right before by Eastwood's good. The gold is uncovered and Eastwood makes an exit, giving his adversary both his share of the gold and some deserved comeuppance. The Searchers, 1956, one of John Wayne's most memorable and beloved films, is a pitch-perfect Western adventure that ends on an iconic image that mirrors the opening scene. Wayne's Ethan Edwards, after reuniting the lost Debbie with her family, departs the Jorgensen Ranch exactly as he arrived, alone. His silhouetted figure in the doorframe is one of the most memorable and impactful scenes in Western history, an encapsulation of his sadly obsessive and eternally lonely character. For a Few Dollars More, 1965, one of the all-time best spaghetti westerns, the follow-up to A Fistful of Dollars and the precursor to the masterpiece The Good, the Bad and the Ugly. This film may be a lesser one than its successor, however, the end is superior. Realizing that his partner, Lee Van Cleef's Colonel Mortimer, has a personal beef with the outlaw they've been pursuing, Clint Eastwood's Man with No Name watches the ending duel unfold. An epic stare-down commences, set to watch chimes and Ennio Morricone's blaring horns. The tension swells until pistols are finally drawn. Mortimer comes out the victor. Revenge is sweet, so sweet that he decides not to take his share of the bounty, allowing the Man with No Name to claim it all.
No, it's all for you. I think you deserve it.
Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, 1969, the Oscar-winning Western classic that stars Paul Newman and Robert Redford as the gunslingers on a ride from Wyoming to Bolivia. As martyrs for freedom, the outlaws go out, guns blazing, in a barrage of bullets, courtesy of the Bolivian army, who surround them while they are busy planning their next move. The movie ends on an iconic freeze frame of the criminals bursting out of a door, to the sounds of the army firing upon them, and the colour drains out of the picture. Totally shocking, and yet a fitting end for the doomed men whose time had reached its end. Shane, 1953, one of the best westerns ever made, and appropriately ends with one of the most memorable scenes in Western history. The scene sees the heroic gunslinger, Shane, finishing off the bad guys, taking a shot to the gut in the process that is likely going to prove fatal. He mounts his horse and starts to ride off, leaving before he brings more trouble upon the town. Little Joey, a boy who idolizes him, begs him to stay. In a now legendary exchange, Shane explains to Joey that he shouldn't try to be like him and that he should go home and be happy with his family. The final moment when Shane rides off while Joey cries for him to come back is undoubtedly one of the best endings in Western history. The Hateful Eight, 2015. The finale sees the outlaw Daisy, Jennifer Jason Leigh, cutting off the hangman's, Kurt Russell, arm to finally free herself, then racing to shoot an immobilized Major Warren, Samuel L. Jackson. Instead, she is shot by Red Rock's sheriff, Mannix, Walter Goggins. Previous enemies bonding over a common cause. Warren and Mannix joyfully hang Daisy in honor of the hangman. Mannix asks to see Warren's fake letter from Abraham Lincoln and reads it out loud, amusing them both before they succumb to their injuries, killing everyone in its cast of villains and anti-heroes. Quentin Tarantino's trademark violence, hilarious and convoluted storytelling paints a realistic portrait of frontier justice. High Noon, 1952. The outlaw, Miller, Ian MacDonald, finally arrives at noon to kill Marshal Kane, Gary Cooper, who's been abandoned by his whole town in fear of Miller, and is forced to face Miller and his gang alone, while Kane's wife, Amy, Grace Kelly, abandons him too. Hearing the gunshots sent her running back to town. Amy discards her religious pacifism to shoot Miller's last man, saving Kane. Miller takes Amy as a hostage. She scratches Miller's eyes, allowing Kane time to shoot Miller. Kane throws away his badge and leaves the town with Amy. High Noon's ending highlights the movie's lone hero theme and its non-stereotypical female characters, both unprecedented at the time. Thanks for your time today. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think in the comments. I appreciate likes and subscribers. Hit the notification button to get my new videos. Take a look at my channel, the link is in the description. Bye for now, see you again soon.
Interesting facts about famous people.